1999 was a remarkable year in cinema, and there was nothing like going to the movies, especially during those final 3 whirlwind months. Just one gem after another, an exciting blend of genres, tons of auteur directors taking chances, the viewer never knowing exactly what they were getting. Between October and December of 1999, we got films that still resonate to this day, like Three Kings, Boys Don't Cry, Being John Malkovich, The Insider, Galaxy Quest, The Talented Mr. Ripley, and Magnolia, just to name a few. Many of these films went on to be nominated at the 72nd Academy Awards. Some, most notably Three Kings, did not. But if there's one movie that came out in the fall of 1999 that absolutely should have been a major awards player, that should have been more beloved by critics and a bigger hit at the box office, it's the title I think in many ways defined that year in the movies, David Fincher's wild, audacious masterpiece Fight Club, starring Edward Norton, Brad Pitt, and Helena Bonham Carter. Released in theaters on October 15, 1999, the film was hated by many critics and only grossed $37 million nationwide, making it seem, on paper at least, like nothing more than a critical and commercial flop, something that would soon be forgotten. But no, hell no, that was never the case with Fight Club. Those of us who got this movie, and to this day, for so many of us, it's an all-time favorite. A film we have watched countless times, a film we can quote with pleasure, a film with so many memorable scenes and performances, a film that represented the risk-taking, challenging, intensely dark, and beautifully subversive storytelling of 1999 cinema, a master storyteller at the helm let loose with a giant budget and gifted ensemble cast. Let's be honest, Fight Club was never going to receive an Oscar nomination for Best Picture, but it should have been a contender in multiple categories like Best Director, Best Actor for Edward Norton, Best Supporting Actress for Helena Bonham Carter, Best Cinematography, and Best Film Editing to start. That it was completely ignored at all the televised precursor ceremonies and got only a lone Oscar nomination for Best Sound Effects Editing is a joke, plain and simple. It's totally ridiculous. So the question becomes why? Why was David Fincher's film so snubbed across the board? Why did awards voters treat this gem of a movie like it didn't exist? My name is Brian Rowe, this is the Awards Contender, and it's time on its 25th anniversary for the Fight Club Oscar Fiasco video. To start, let's explore the project's origins. Chuck Palahniuk published his novel in 1996, the story of an office worker insomniac and a carefree soap maker who form a popular underground fight club.
The first rule of Fight Club is, you do not talk about Fight Club. The second rule of Fight Club is, you do not talk about Fight Club.
20th Century Fox snapped up the film rights with such directors as Peter Jackson, Danny Boyle, and David O. Russell considered to helm the adaptation. David Fincher became a serious contender early on, and even though he was reluctant to work with Fox after his disastrous experience on Alien 3, he eventually signed on. Tons of A-list stars were discussed for the 3 main characters, including Russell Crowe, Matt Damon, and Sean Penn, but Edward Norton came on board early on, as did Brad Pitt, who wanted to reunite with Fincher following Seven. Fincher looked at Janeane Garofalo, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and Courtney Love for the role of Marla, but he eventually cast Helena Bonham Carter based on her Oscar-nominated performance in The Wings of the Dove. Budgeted at $50 million, eventually going as high as $65 million, Fight Club commenced production in July 1998 and wrapped that December, Fincher shooting more than 1,500 rolls of film, 3 times the average. Early cuts of the movie worried Fox executives, and after the Columbine High massacre, the studio delayed the film from July 1999 to October. They didn't know how to market Fight Club, unsure if they should promote it as an art film or a commercial film, unsure exactly who the demographic was who'd come to see it, men and women, only men, teenagers instead of adults. In the weeks leading up to the film's release, they never found a clear path forward in their advertising strategy, and so, yeah, there was cause for concern. Following its premiere at the Venice Film Festival in September, Fight Club only grossed $11 million opening weekend in mid-October, taking $37 million in the United States and about $100 million worldwide. So what are the main reasons Fight Club throughout most of 1999 looked to have a genuine shot at more Oscar nominations than just sound effects editing? Here are 5 of them. The first reason was Brad Pitt, who by the end of the 90s was one of the most famous movie stars in the world, with a track record of many successful films behind him, lots of which got into the Oscars. A River Runs Through It, Interview with the Vampire, Legends of the Fall, and Seven all did well at both the box office and the Academy Awards. And 12 Monkeys from 1995 earned Pitt a Golden Globe win and his first Oscar nomination in Best Supporting Actor. Sure, he'd had a few flops by 99, namely The Devil's Own, 7 Years in Tibet, and Meet Joe Black. Those 3 movies did not set the box office on fire, but Pitt was still a name that meant something to audiences, and his reteaming with director David Fincher for an adaptation of an ambitious, controversial novel made Fight Club one of the giant event films of 1999. Was Pitt on his way to receiving his first Oscar nomination for Best Actor? At the beginning of that year, it definitely seemed possible. The second reason Fight Club seemed like an Oscar prospect was its other male lead, Edward Norton, whose star just kept rising in the second half of the 90s. He gave one of the most celebrated film debut performances in history in Primal Fear, which earned him a Golden Globe win and his first Oscar nomination in Best Supporting Actor. And then just 2 years later came his much-deserved Best Actor Oscar nomination for American History X. With that kind of recognition from the Academy, especially so early in his film career, one had to take his performance in Fight Club as a serious awards contender. The third reason was Helena Bonham Carter, of course, who had also just enjoyed some recognition from the Academy with her Best Actress nomination in early 1998 for The Wings of the Dove. She wasn't as big of a name in 1999 as Brad Pitt and Edward Norton, but she had the Oscar cred from a beloved recent period drama, and she'd also appeared in other Academy Award favorites like 1986's A Room with a View and 1992's Howard's End. Her role as Marla in Fight Club appeared from the very first trailer to be a major departure for Carter in terms of what we'd seen her do before, a physical and emotional transformation that had the makings, easily I would say, of a Best Supporting Actress Oscar nomination. The fourth reason Fight Club looked to be a movie to keep in the awards conversation was the insanely talented director David Fincher, who was getting better with movie after movie, and who at the end of the 90s seemed to be on the cusp of a Best Director Oscar nomination with the right project and the right timing. Ultimately, he didn't become an Oscar player until The Curious Case of Benjamin Button and The Social Network about a decade later, but everybody early on could recognize his enormous talent, and considering the buzzy source material and monumental cast of Fight Club, one had to think Fincher had a shot at some director nominations. And the fifth reason had to be that prime fall release date, mid-October for God's sake, right around the start of award season. You would think if Fight Club had zero potential at Golden Globes and Oscars and the rest, the studio might have put it out in the summer, as was their original idea, or maybe hold it to spring 2000. Premiering it at the Venice Film Festival before a big launch in October seemed like 20th Century Fox saw some promise at least in the film as a potential awards movie. American Beauty, the eventual Oscar winner of Best Picture and Best Director, had just opened in theaters, and we were close to the opening of Being John Malkovich, which eventually got into some top Oscar categories like Best Director and Best Supporting Actress. If everybody had fallen head over heels for Fight Club, it absolutely could have taken the Academy Awards by storm, at minimum in some technical categories. As I said near the start of this video, nobody was expecting Fight Club to get an Oscar nomination for Best Picture necessarily, considering its dark tone and subject matter. However, beyond sound effects editing, you'd think it could have gotten into Best Art Direction, Cinematography, Film Editing, maybe Sound and Visual Effects. In addition, a Best Supporting Actress nomination for Bonham Carter and a Best Director nomination for Fincher would have been inspired, would have aged so very well 25 years on. So what the hell went wrong? What happened with Fight Club? Why did this movie fall so short during the 2000 award season and become, in a way, a major Oscar fiasco? Here are the top 5 reasons. The first and probably most important reason is the brutal beating Fight Club received from many of the nation's top film critics, whose support for a wildly ambitious and subversive film like this one was essential for it to become an awards player. I mean, some liked it, some even loved it, like Michael Wilmington in the Chicago Tribune, who called it a bloody, hilarious ride into the twisted recesses of the modern male psyche. But there were also those critics who dismissed it, even loathed it, like Kenneth Turan in the Los Angeles Times, who gave it 1.5 stars out of 5 and said it's not a movie even worth talking about. Lisa Schwartzbaum in Entertainment Weekly gave it a D rating, Desson Thompson in Washington Post called it sophomoric, and Roger Ebert gave it only 2 stars out of 4, calling the second act of the film pandering and the third act trickery.
Fight Club contains the raw materials for a great film, but I don't think it had the courage to go all the way with its original vision from hell, and instead it turns into stylish macho porn and blows stuff up real good. It claims to be, I think, against violence, but at the same time it exploits it like crazy. I don't think a lot of people in the audience are going to get what it thinks its message is.
Not every critic needed to love it, but those vitriolic reviews killed its awards chances pretty quickly. The second reason was the poor box office. There's no way around it. If Fight Club had received mixed reviews but had been an unexpected massive hit at the box office in October 1999, connecting with audiences and staying in theaters well into November and December, then I think Fight Club would have done better throughout award season, probably securing a handful of Golden Globe nominations, maybe some at BAFTA, and a whole lot more than one nomination at the Oscars. It could have withstood a few bad reviews if the film had made money, but bad reviews and lackluster ticket sales, forget about it. Audiences and critics rejecting Fight Club made award season an uphill battle, to be sure. As did, in a broad sense, the subject matter of the movie, which is reason number 3. I remember watching this film at age 14 on opening night with my dad, and being shocked, like totally shocked at many of the things I was seeing on the screen. Fight Club is not a film that plays it safe, or feels watered down by any means. Fincher takes you to some dark and dangerous places, complete with many outrageous scenes and set pieces that were always going to turn off some audience members, especially at the time. You take into account all the controversial themes and images and dialogue, that insane third act twist involving Tyler Durden, and as is always the case, genre bias, it becomes obvious why the Oscars went swiftly in a different direction. This is a 2-hour and 20-minute psychological thriller / dark comedy that's filthy and vulgar and at times completely insane. And so yeah, Fight Club was something lots of Academy members back then were never going to embrace. The fourth reason I would say is that David Fincher has never been an artist who makes movies to win awards, and I'm sure at no step along the way of directing Fight Club did the idea of Oscar nomination and wins even occur to him. The Curious Case of Benjamin Button from 2008, you could argue, is the only movie he's made that's come anywhere close to an Oscar bait project, but everything else, including The Social Network, which just so happened to do well during award season, has always just been about the telling of great stories using phenomenal actors and technical craft at the highest of levels. If Fincher had wanted to win awards by the end of the 1990s, he would have taken on projects that weren't Fight Club. He would have signed on for Shakespeare in Love or The Cider House Rules, not the kind of challenging material he's always been more attracted to throughout the decades. And the fifth and final reason Fight Club never had a chance of becoming a genuine awards player in early 2000, the intense competition. If Fight Club had opened during a year where there weren't so many celebrated end-of-the-year films duking it out for Oscar nominations, it could have done better, I think. Maybe it could have received 3 or 4 technical noms instead of just the one in sound effects editing, where it was just happy to be there up against Star Wars Episode 1: The Phantom Menace and the 4-time Oscar winner that night, The Matrix. Honestly, that Fight Club even got that lone Academy Award nomination after missing entirely at the Golden Globes, Critics' Choice, SAG, and BAFTA, it's a minor miracle. They could have easily put in The Mummy, which earned a Best Sound Oscar nomination, and Fight Club's slot in sound effects editing, and called it a day. And so, Fight Club, one of my very favorite films of 1999, a movie I continue to revisit and delight in to this day, can at least be called an Academy Award nominee. It may have missed Best Cinematography and Best Film Editing. It may have missed all 8 of the top categories like Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Supporting Actress. Like, it could have done better. It should have done better. I would have given this movie probably 6, 7, 8 nominations easily. I'm sure many of its lifelong fans would have wanted this endlessly rewatchable movie to have received more Oscar nominations along with a handful of well-deserved wins, but ultimately Fight Club didn't need any awards nominations to be considered these days a modern classic. It didn't need the love from critics and awards voters. It didn't need to be a major box office hit. Like many of the best films ever made, it just needed time, with enough fans to embrace it, with enough people to rediscover and reevaluate it throughout the decades, and with that mind-blowing DVD set to take up space on countless physical media shelves. Norton and Pitt are still asked about the movie all the time. Norton spoofed it on The Late Late Show with James Corden, and it was in fact 10 years after the movie's release when it got a big televised prize, the Spike TV Guy Award, accepted in person by Fincher, Pitt, and Norton, who spent most of the speech reading all the negative reviews their movie got in 1999.
A load of rancid, depressing swill from start to finish. Rex Reed, The New York Observer.
I mean, come on. It doesn't get any better than that.
Thank you for giving an award to our movie, which is about how meaningless awards like this actually are.
Fight Club is a film that endures, always has, always will. The Cider House Rules may have received nominations for Best Picture and Best Director at the 72nd Academy Awards, but you know what? We're not talking about that movie now. These days, Fight Club is almost always one of the first films referred to when we talk about that monumental year in cinema that was 1999. As it should be. It's incredible, a total stunner no matter how many times you watch it. Oscars or no Oscars, David Fincher's groundbreaking movie will always be a once-in-a-generation masterpiece. Thanks so much for watching and subscribing, and let me know in the comments below, what do you think of Fight Club on its 25th anniversary? Did it deserve to get more Oscar nominations than just Best Sound Effects Editing? We'll see you next time at the Awards Contender.